am here today and I wanted to show you how to start a center of a flower. So I've been working on some dahlias and I wanted to do two shapes for you. This is about 1 inch and this is about 2-inch rolls. So usually when you take the whole piece of German Crepe Paper, you are going to fold it in half, and these are techniques that I use to make things a little bit easier and cleaner to work with, because I like having, I also like having two different scissors. This is the Kai N210, which is about a 6.5 inch, I believe, and this is the Kai N6165, which is, I take it back, this is the 6.5 and this is the 8-inch. Which I really like to do. This is my heavy duty one, and this one is when I want to use fringes. So we'll just snip them off and cut them at the fold edge so you have more manageable pieces to work with, and you know that they're all equal length and different sizes. And I'll go ahead and do this one too. So what you want to do is pretty much fold it in half, fold it again, and then fold it one more time. This makes it a lot easier to work with and to handle. So we'll cut the folded edge, and then you'll have all these pieces. And I like to actually, when I get ready to do the petals, I actually will keep them like this. And if you have a paper cutter, you can do that, and that's what I showed in my last video. But I'm going to show you how to do it if you don't have one. So I pretty much just eye it. So I'm just cutting, putting it down, cutting. And then I like to vary my width quite a bit so you can actually see they're not all the same. And that's what makes my flower a little bit more unique, I think, is because they're not uniform and they're all a little bit different. And it's okay if they get mixed up because I'm actually going to hand cut all the pieces. So I leave this on the side, and then when I get ready to do it, then I will show you how to do some of the petal work. And we're going to be working on some dahlias. So I've actually made two, and I'll kind of put this on the side. So this one I just made yesterday, and this is a cafe au lait, and this is, I'm not quite sure, I should know my dahlia names much better, but these are one I just finished this morning, coloring and everything. So I'll leave this on the side so you can take a look, and then we'll go ahead and get started. So we'll start with the centerpieces, and what I like to do is I'll have, this is actually going to a wedding bouquet, so this is about maybe 14-inch stem, and so I like to keep them long, and then I will cut them a little bit later. So to get the fringe in the middle, what I usually will do is I will fold the 1-inch strip in half. And then from one edge, I will just go in and just start cutting as finely as I can. And I'm just cutting away. And as you can see, I try to keep it as close as possible. And off we go. And then I've been thinking about how to explain the centerpieces a little bit more for you. So I like to do 2 of these fringes for the inside of the dahlia. And this will give you the volume of the center of the dahlias. So I'm almost about done. And there's always a little bit left where it's a little bit too wide, and so I just go back in and I'll just carefully snip it. So that one piece is done. I'll go ahead and do one more for you. I fold it in half, and I find it easier when I just fold it in half. When I fold it too much, the paper gets a little bit too thick, and then it doesn't cut as well, and it's much harder to get the fine pieces. It might go faster, but you'll lose the detail work on this. So I think this part is all about practicing and cutting it as much as you can, and just cut. That's all we're doing, and it just takes practice. And that last piece, there you go, finely stripped pieces. And then the next piece I like to do is, it's a little bit more tedious. I'll switch my gear again because I'm doing a little bit more heavy work. I'm actually going to take 2 this time, so I'll go a little bit faster. if you have any fallen pieces, don't worry about it. Just sweep it aside, and then I will go in and cut maybe a centimeter, and I'll vary it a little bit, 1.2 to 1, and I'm just snipping away until I get to the very end, and then these large pieces, I'll go ahead and cut them in half. But you can leave them, because we'll probably go back and make a little bit larger pieces. So my technique is I always fold my piece in half, and then I'll just cut it. As you can see, and then you have your petal. And then I will usually just, sometime I find it easier when I'm cutting, I'll just cut it, cup it, and twirl it to give it that tubular look that dahlia has in the center of the flower. So I'll just leave that aside. And so usually when I'm doing this, I'm watching some sort of TV and just watching, and I'll just twirl it, and I'll just cut a little bit, cup it, and then with my finger, I just twirl it. So you have a little bit of that. And then I'll do a few more so I can show you. So some of them are really, really tiny, but it looks really cool. So yeah. And I like how all the pieces are a little bit different, and I think it makes it a little bit more special. So let's say you have one that's really tiny, even if you fold it in half, it's gonna be really tight. So what I'll do is I will just take it and I'll just cut it like that. And we'll trim the top part, but I won't worry about the bottom. So there you go. You can see how it's a little bit cupped, but not too much, but just enough where you can actually twirl it. So I'll do a few of these. And then I'll come back to it a little bit later. But I want to show you this other part so you're not get overwhelmed by this. So this other part is the other petals on the outer part, once you get past the tubular. And this one, I'm just gonna fold it in half, trim it so it looks almost like a pea. I'll open it, and this is the interesting part. So what you wanna do is you're gonna take your two thumb, and I'll try to move this up a little bit, and you're just gonna cup the middle part of it, the middle bottom part, until it turns like that. And then what I've noticed in some of the petals is the outer part, and these floral stems are really great because you can actually use it to bend it and give it a little bit more shape piece, and you can see it form just like that. And you take your wire and you just kind of tilt it and it becomes a petal. So we'll do a few, and then I usually like to cut them all, and then I'll come back and cup them and make them work. So I'll do a few, and you can see how quickly they really will go. So you just want to make a slight pea. They do not have to be the same. I do like them a little bit different because it just gives just an interest, a contrast. So it makes the eye move around, and it makes it look more interesting. So I'll do a few, and then I will show you the result. And I'll show you how to put it together. I guess that would be the biggest thing. Okay, another thing I'll do, besides cupping it like this, I will move my thumb up a little bit, and I will cup it so it's actually has a little bit more of a wave. So this is another fun technique that you can do to give your petals a little bit more character. You can use these floral wires, you can use something a little bit thicker like a chopstick, but sometimes I find the chopstick a little bit too big for these delicate petals. So I'll just open them real quick. And I'm using quite a bit of force, you can actually see, but you have to be careful that you don't rip the paper. And I think it's all about trial and error and doing it until you know the capability of your fingers and how much you can stretch each of the petals before the petal will break. And don't worry, I have torn quite a few petals. So that's all I do, is I just go like that, and then if I want more, sometimes what I'll do is I'll keep my thumb in the middle and I'll actually stretch it down so you have more of a cup look. And the really great thing about these crepe papers is it has almost like a memory. So it'll remember the stretches, the cupping, the pressure points that you would put on here. And I think that's why a lot of paper florists, they use this type of paper, because it just creates this natural curvature and movement, and also the vein of the petals, which is really great. There you go. So we have this portion, and there's one more step I want to show you real quick. So this is something you can think about doing, or you don't really have to. I found that this part right here, after I finish the fringe part, I want to do really tiny petals versus these guys. So what I'll usually do is I will start this part, and I found that my hand naturally want to curve to the right. And I found that if I just flip the paper back and forth, it's a little bit more time consuming, but I'll actually get more of a curve, a natural curve that I couldn't get by just cutting straight through. Like for some reason, my hand doesn't want to naturally curve the other way. I mean, it could work, but I just feel like it doesn't quite, I don't have the control that I have, and I don't mind switching back and forth a little bit. And I do find that if you maybe have like a paper line, actually clip this together so the paper doesn't move. But I found that if I just keep my finger constantly on the petals, it will actually stay pretty put. But I'll just go back and forth, and we'll finish this really quick. And I'll just do like one of this. I don't think, you could probably do another one to get a more lush look, but I tried that yesterday and it was just a little bit too much. I think for this one, I'll just do one, and then we'll see where it goes. There we go. So I hope you're enjoying the Posey box. I'll talk a little bit about the Posey box a little bit. So this is the other crepe paper that I included in there. So I included the purple one, which we worked on previously a few days ago. And now this is the white one. And I do really enjoy the white one because there is so much, you can color it so well. There you go. Put together the flowers. So we started out with the fringe tip, and then we'll go up to this piece. So to get this piece ready, what I'll do is I'll actually go through here and just stretch it out with my thumb. And you can see it already starting to curve and move. And that's all you really want to do. And then you'll go through here and you'll kind of bend the top part down a little bit. And this will create the bud part of the dahlia. And I'll just go back, make sure it's all nicely stretched. And then what I'll do is we'll add a little bit of glue. Not too much, but just enough to get, there you go. And then we'll take one of these guys, one of the floral wires, and then if it's too much, I'll take a little bit and just spread it out and make sure that each of these pieces have a bit of glue on it. And I'll just start from the middle part, and I'm just going to wrap it around pretty tightly, and then just making sure the glue moves. And I want to keep the top part pretty even. And I'm pinching the bottom part. There you go. And then what I'll do is at the base here, I'm going to pinch it in to make sure the glue gets spread up a little bit. And then what I'll do is I'll actually go in here with my finger and kind of bend it a little bit more. I just want to get but I'm not touching the inner part. And then I'll take this and I'll kind of gently push it in so there's a little bit more room. And surprisingly, this might give it enough room. And then I'll take my thumb, I'm gonna press it down a little bit. And it kind of breaks it up and give it a little bit more air. And you can kind of see it starting to look like a bud. And then for this other part right here, I have a vase on the side, which I will put this here for you. And then, same thought process, you're gonna spread this out. And then I'm just gonna run my thumb a little bit. And I'm just gonna break it up. I wanna give the leaf, the petals, a little bit more curvature, and I'm trying to like loosen that stiffness that the paper have. And so it has a little bit more bend, a little bit more care, and has a more translucent. And I'll just randomly go through here and kind of cup a few of them, not all of them, just maybe some of the bigger ones. That way when I wrap it around the bud part, it's gonna have a little bit more texture, a little bit more movement, and it's actually a little bit faster than this, but this one I use it because I really want the tubular look. So again, we'll add the glue to the inner part. Oops. And then we'll take this back over. And again, what you want to do is you want to put it a little bit above, and you're just going to wrap it around. Just going to wrap until you cover the inner part. And you don't want to touch the top. You're only touching the bottom part, and you're giving it. And I will show you how to poof it back up again. So just make sure that the glue gets adhered to the bottom part, and that's all you're looking for. And now I'm pressing. I'm just taking my thumb and my index and I'm just pushing it in. So now you have more of a bud. And you could actually stop right here and put the sepals on it, and it'll create a bud to put onto the stem, which I might do a little bit later. But I want to get some of these dahlias done first. And so I'm just pushing it in, creating a little bit of volume, and just making sure that the glue inside the petal, since I only did one strip, is spread all along so it will stick. And I'm pretty happy with that, and it looks pretty good. And then what I'll do next is I'm actually going to put glue along the edge here, and I'm just going to go up and down. Your finger is going to get a little bit sticky, but that's okay, because really we want these tubular guys to like stay in. So we'll do this, and there's no rhyme or reason. I'm pretty much using my eye, and I like to do not space them equal distant, otherwise it looks very symmetrical. So I will find gaps. So like for example, you can see a gap here and a gap here. So I'll take one of these guys and I'll just place it right there, and I'll do it at different height. So they're not going to be too high and they're not going to be too low, but they'll be a little bit different from each other. So I'll just move it around so you can see it's not spaced equally. And sometimes I'll even put some right next to each other. And then I'll put another one here. And then I'll do another one right here. Whoops. And the next part I'm going to do with my finger, I'll just round it up so it's more enclosed. And then the next part, we'll put that down. Let me see if I can move this guy in for you. The next part I'm going to do is this one. So when we're doing this part, I want to show you how I get that closeness in. So this is how I do my petals. There's a little bit of pinching, and then I just take this out and I spread it out so it'll lay onto the flower a little bit easier. Like that. I pinch at the very bottom, I'm just taking this so it has a little rest place. And so this is what I've been using. I use the exact same thing that I put in my Posey box. And I think it's all about practice and making things work for you. So I'll just add just a strip of glue right there. And then I'll just line them up so that way they're ready to go. And I like to do bits and pieces by stages, take a look at it, see where it's going, and then cut more petals, fold more petals, and you'll see at each layer that you do, they're a little bit different, but it all comes together really well. So back to this part. So you have your bud, and I'm just going to start here because I naturally want to fill that particular gap. So I'm just going to fold it in, and then I'm just putting that piece there, and then that's it. And then the next one I'm going to do is I'm going to go here. And the first layer that I do, I'm actually going to make some really small and some really big, because it's the part where the bud part is unfolding, and the more, if you look at dahlias, they're more uniform on the outer ring instead of in the middle. In the middle, they're just exploring like, ooh, I'm opening up and I'm being happy. Okay. So, and you can kind of see how it's forming, and then when I get to another petal, I will nestle this in between. I'm going to make this one a little bit smaller, but you can see just by folding that piece, and that was the same petal that all these were, I just fold it and pinch the bottom part so it has a little bit more character. And I'm going to do the same thing again, just like that. Okay. So this is the first layer of the dahlia. And you can see how wonky it is, but I really love that look. It just adds so much interest. And so your eye moves when one petal is like, ooh, look at that one, look at that one. So there you go. So I will cut a little bit more, and then I will show you. I'll show you how to finish it, and it won't take very long. I'll do probably maybe 20 more petals, and then I will show you how to put the rest of the flowers together. And if you want more tutorials like this, just let me know. I'm really, right now, I'm trying to finish up a wedding order. Well, I'm starting a wedding order, and she would love dahlias and roses. And so I might be doing a quick tutorial on how to do the rosebud. And I think a lot of people do have a little bit of trouble doing the roses. And I recently did a whole bunch of roses, and that was a lot of fun. It made me realize, like, it made me practice on the rose, which I think a lot of people, I mean, you can do roses, but if you have like a goal, it just makes things a little bit easier and more fun to do. Okay. So I'm pretty much folding it in half. I'm cutting it, and then creating my piles of scrap. And that's my thing. I like to cut a whole bunch and then make a round, reevaluate it, and then see how big or how fat I should be making the other ones. So I'm going to do this real quick. And I'm just going to bring it out. I'm just cupping it just randomly. Some I'm doing side to side like that, and then some that I'm doing just a little bit diagonal, and it just creates another dimension, another mood to it. And then, let me grab a wire. So then I'll come back here and then I'll start opening up the petal. And I noticed that I really like the round look, so I'm just going to trim the top part so it has more of a round look. And I'll just do this. And the really cool part of these flowers is if you don't like something, cut it off. But you have to be careful that you don't overcut it. And I'll just go through here and notice my thumb, it's right in the middle of it. It helps keeps the petal steady while I'm tugging, and it'll let me know that I'm going too far, but I'm also helping it to keep the cup part that I started with. And I'm just taking the wire, I'm just swiping it, and then I'm just creating that lift of each of the petals part. Some edges I'll go a little bit more, and some I'll just leave. And also afterwards I can go back and cup it a little bit more, curl it a little bit more after all the petals are glued in. So there's always I'm always looking at the flower and saying, can I make this better? Can I improve on it? And how can I improve on it? So that's constantly on my mind. And I think that's why my flowers get better and better is I hate to say this, but I'm never satisfied with my flowers, but I'm always happy the way it looks until I work on it again. So it's a constant work in progress for me. And so sometimes when I'm also gluing the petals, I'm actually looking at the sizes. So I'm making sure that if there's a large one, I'll set that aside for later on in the flower placement. Like this one in particular, that one's pretty large, and I will group them together. And then if, like for the sample, these 4 right here are really small, so I'll make sure that I use that one next. But again, it's all about the regular petal placement. It really adds that detail and funness. So let me go back and we'll redo this again. So naturally when I look at this, there's gap, gap, gap. And so to me, this is an obvious gap. So I'm gonna just start right here, and I'm just gonna put it together so this is the layer that you want to start putting it so it's more uniform. And the dahlia, when you look at it, there are significant gaps in between each flower. You can, don't worry about the placement of it quite yet, because you're going to go back again and you're going to put more petals in between. So I'll just gauge which petal has see here. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. I was like, where does this petal go? And so you can see it's starting to come together. And then if I see a gap, I'll just go back and put it one in. There we go. So I literally put 20 petals in, and it goes by so fast. And notice this one, I really don't like it. It's a little bit too pointy. I'll just go back and just trim it off. And then this is the under view of it. So these are all the petals that's going through. And as I go down, I'm going to trim down the petal part when I get to the next part, so the stem doesn't create a bulkiness to it. So right now I'm just tightening it, I'm pushing it in, and just locking all the glue into place. Just pinching it in, and then it looks like I'll probably need at least 20 or 30 more petals. So let's cut a few more. So back to the table. We'll just move this aside. And we're just gonna cut away. Again, the same shape. You want to keep everything pretty uniform, because dahlias, they have a uniformity. And notice this petal's quite large. I'm going to make sure that I keep that on the side and make sure that I put the petals together. And if it's way too big, I can always go back and retrim it. But I like big petals and I like little petals. It just adds just an interest to the flower when you're looking at it. And you will probably say, how can I do this? Like, how can I do like 20 or a dozen of these? I think the overall look really makes it important for me. I don't like to see all the flowers completely the same. It just adds too much uniformity to it. And to me, it has to be a little bit different. The same, but different. So I'm just gonna cut a few more, and sometimes you can actually take two. Like this one came together, I'm just gonna go with the flow and just cut it. Here's another one, and so I'll just cut it. And then here's one single, I'll just fold that in half, trim it. And then you notice how I was telling you about making it a little bit shorter so it's not so bulky at the end? I'm just gonna go through here real quick and trim off like a centimeter or two. And I'll just vary the length a little bit because I'll just go ahead and cut all of them. And I'm hoping this will be the last batch and then we'll have a finished dahlia. Okay, scrap, go over here. Again, we'll do the same thing. It's a little bit shorter now, and there'll be some longer pieces, but that's okay, because it's all about where you put the glue, and you're looking at the edge and not at the bottom. So we'll quickly open all these guys up. And you notice there's like little wrinkle part. When we actually go back with the floral wire and fold the edges on the outside, they'll disappear just because I'll show you why. And then, and if it really bothers you, what you can do is you can just take your finger and just kind of stretch it out and smooth it out. So here we go. So back to the wire, you just want to have a firm grip to this, and then you're just gonna move it around and create that petal look. And there's a difference between a curved one and an uncurved one. And we'll just move it around. And if it goes too much, and if it's too angular, I say go with the flow, curl it in. Yep, there we go. Here's a nice fat one that we looked at earlier. I'll just take it and I'll just run the wire and I'll just naturally create that roundness to it. And if you have any questions on this technique, just comment down below and I'll try my best to answer them for you and for other people. They might have the same question. So feel free to let me know if you have any questions, or if you want me to go a little bit deeper in some of the techniques, I can certainly do that for you too. Okay. We're almost about there. I think it might be actually enough. And just because if I do make extras, I have to make at least 6 or 7 more dahlias. And so I'll just use the next set for the next dahlia that I make. All right, here we go. And so we'll take this, dab a little bit of glue, that one I forgot to trim, but that's okay. Whoa, that was a little bit too much. When it comes out too much, you can take another piece and just scrape it. And to me, that's still a lot, so I'm just gonna take it and move it. One thing you don't want to do is to put too much glue on your paper. If you do, the base of the flower gets really wet and then the paper starts tearing, which you do not want to do. Especially, let's say for example, you put a petal in and you didn't like where you put it. You want to be able to move it. And with putting a tiny bit of glue, so you really, like, this is how much glue you really want to put on there. Not too much, just enough. Like this one here is a little bit too much. So this one probably could use a little bit more. But there we go. Okay, so what I'll do is, this one I didn't put down, and it's pretty small, so I'll take this. Again, I'm looking at gaps. Where do I see the natural gap where the next flow? I see a few. There's one here and there's one on this side. And so I will go ahead and put it here. And one thing you can actually do is sometime when you don't know where it is, turn it upside down. You can start seeing the gaps easily. Like here's a gap that needs to be put down. So I'm just gonna grab this one and you can see the gap right there. So I'm just gonna put this right here. I'm gonna move it out a little bit and then put it in place. And then you can actually see that it did fit. And now I see another gap, which I'm gonna take this, put it here, and then I'm moving on to the next gap, which is gonna be here. And the thing is, you do wanna constantly look up and down, like on top view, and then you wanna flip it over to see if you miss any gap. Because sometimes the top view is great, but then when you turn it back down, you kinda see very obvious gap, like you need to fill it before you move on to the next piece. So here, to me, I see a natural gap. So I'm just gonna put it there, and then before I press too deeply, I'm just gonna look above, make sure that it looks good, and then I will go on and put another one right here. And then after a while, once you filled that part, you're gonna be able to see how it forms. Because when you do the dahlias, they're actually V-shaped. So you have like two major petals and then another one, and then you want to fill in that gap. And the best thing about these glue is you can actually tug and move it around and then get it where you really want it to be. So yeah, so I see a gap here, so I'm just gonna put it there. And there's a natural gap here and here. And then I see another one right here. And oh, that one fell down, but that's okay. You just take it. Oh, you know why? There's no glue in this one. I'll set that aside. And then you can see this one. And then make sure every once in a while stop and then press the bottom part. Make sure that everything is securely attached on. And then I see a natural piece right here. Another one right here. And then side view, if you want to see, is here. And then another one right here. So you want to look top view, side view, underneath too. It makes things much easier, and it looks a lot better because you're looking at 360 degrees. And I think we're almost about there. And then I'm just gonna go ahead and finish this particular piece by adding this one petal that I forgot. And I think we're gonna call it done. You can see how full and lush it looks. And now the hard part is I have one last petal where I'm gonna put it. So I see a natural gap here. So I'll just put it there. And now we have the piece. And then now the fun part is looking at it, seeing where do I need trim. So I see, do you see how that piece right there is really uneven? And it's like been cut across. You can go back and just trim it. So it's more of a round shape. Here's another one. And then here's another one, another one. And then I will take the wire and I'll just naturally curve it. Any wrinkle part, don't worry about it because it'll smooth out. There we go. All done. I like to keep the stem long. Once I put it into the bouquet, then it'll come across. And I want to put the sepal on it and then floral tape this. But this is one of my dahlias. Nice and lush and pretty. Yay! I hope you enjoyed the video. And if you have any further questions, let me know. Thank you so much for joining me. Happy making!